Hey guys, it's Zangetsu 134 here, bringing you another Kamen Rider vlog. This time I'll be doing episodes 9 and 10, the O's arc. You'll notice I'm being a little bit quiet. It's 10:30 at night, people are trying to sleep. My weeks have been kind of crazy now, especially because I'm getting into the holiday rush. I'm sure you guys remember last year when I was doing vlogs that it was kind of crazy for me to start doing stuff as well. So my vlogs may come a little late. I should hope it might not be as bad this year because I'm bi-weekly. Um, but just letting you guys know, it's gonna be a little rough for the next couple months until we get out of the holiday seasons. That I will be probably having a hard time getting stuff out at a decent pace. But I'm gonna try, and especially because I've got 2 weeks to do this, it shouldn't be bad. Um, I might try to stockpile my reviews somehow. I mean, it's gonna be hard to do since I'm a vlogger and I do these when the series comes out, but I will try my best. So, anyways, let's get down this arc. This arc was pretty good. I think it's actually a lot better than some of the arcs we've had before. In terms of the arcs that came before, I think my favorite was probably the X8 arc, just because it felt like the most complete of an arc and it gave the writers a lot of stuff. This one is actually probably one of my more closer favorites. It's certainly better than the the very crappy Fies Forze arc, mostly because it doesn't try to pretend that stuff happened as it did. Um, but yeah, I thought this arc was a lot better handled than some of the previous ones, and I like the Wizard arc, last arc, but it was kind of a shame because we only really got um, Beast. We didn't get to see uh, I can't think of Wizard's name. Haruto. His name's Haruto. We didn't get to see Haruto at all. This one we didn't get to see Ankh, but we did get to see Eiji and Hina-chan. It was nice seeing them again because I will admit, while I'm not like the biggest fan of O's, I warmed up to when it first came out. I felt it was very much trying to be like a lighter version of Kuga, especially with the way the things play out. Especially because he's a new O's after an O's the rider from the past, sort of thing. There was two Kugas, Riku and Yusuke Godai. But I thought this one was done really well. I've come to warm up to O's. I think as someone who loved Double, I kind of felt Double was more interesting just because it was its own thing. I've always felt that part of the problem with O's was that it was trying to be both like Kuga and also trying to do a dynamic like Double, with the fact that there was Hina and a mysterious magical character that helped them out with like Ankh and Philip. And granted, um, it it's certainly not a bad thing. Um, and I think I've come to appreciate it more than I did before. Um, Sorry, I'm actually using my TV downstairs with my laptop, so I'm looking at Facebook while I'm doing this, and I shouldn't be doing that, but I'm just trying to get stuff ready so when I get done, I can watch more TV. I your Zangetsu 134 lives a very glamorous life. Oh man, I'm not looking forward to the fact that I've only got Kamen Rider. I've kind of missed daily episodes of My Hero Academia, and I haven't had time to get the new volume. But anyway, enough about me. So yeah, while O's is not one of my more favorites, I've come to appreciate it, and I love the suit design for O's, and I love the idea of him having like three different, like an arm, leg, and helmet that can turn that they have like combos, but he can also mix and match them to his will. I thought that was really cool. So in this one, uh, we also get a cameo from another writer alumni, this time Dan Kuroto, or as he calls himself, Dan Kuroto, or Dan Kuroking, as the subs pronounced it, who has, in this timeline, become a king and has turned his foundation and mansion into a kingdom that secedes itself from Japan, and he's kidnapped a politician from the Japanese government, which we find out later is Eiji Hino, who thanks to the altering of time, has become a politician, but he's still a good guy. He wants to help people. In doing so, Sogo, interested in learning about being a good king, decides to try and see what sort of king Dan Kuroking will be. And of course, he finds out that he's an evil bad guy, and using some trickery to convince convince Dan of his allegiance to him, he tricks him into becoming one of his basically the head of his security. Um, while Gates and Tsukuyomi try to figure out when he comes in, and they also come across fighting Gates. Gates fights Sogo, and Sogo tricks him into thinking that he's turning evil, which is all a ruse into figuring out what kind of king Dan was. Along the way, he meets Hina and Eiji and rescues them, and in doing so, convinces Eiji to give him the O's and Taka ride watches so that he can go back in time and defeat Dan Kuroking in 2010, defeating another O's and resetting the timeline. All the while, Gates decides to leave the apartment of Sogo's home, as he believes he's gotten too soft and he will not be able to defeat. He won't be able to defeat Sogo if he does become an evil overlord. So a lot happens in this episode. These episodes, I will admit, I like the beginning where we see Wool, Schwartz, and Aura actually discussing how they should try to find a better king to try and succeed Omazeo, and they realize that Omazeo became a king because he had the desire and the drive to be a king. And we see that with Sogo. He wants to be a king no matter what. So, Wool... Is it Wool? Yeah, it's Wool, yeah. Wool goes back in time to 2010, where Dan is working for his father, and he's trying to create the ultimate game so that he can become Dan Deuce, or God, Dan Kuroto, as he was in Exide. Actually, apparently, he's in this because they're doing a campaign with the Genom Ride Watch that you can get it with specially marked toy products according to one of the the 0.5s. I actually didn't see the 10.5. It sadly isn't out yet. I don't know why it's not out, but they're not really super important. I don't mind not seeing them. They're fun and they're silly and they're fun to watch, but really you're here to watch the actual TV show and get my reviews on that. I try to do them when they're really important, but basically he's here for that, which I don't really mind. Dan's a very popular character, so him getting a lot of memorabilia kind of makes sense. It's frustrating that he's here instead of some other character, but it works out, and especially because he kind of takes on the role of Nobunaga, which I kind of they bring up in this as Sogo's talking about Nobunaga to Tsukuyomi, showing his history stuff and how he looks up to Nobunaga because he was able to neon and night all of Japan. Which Gates, of course, brings up, he was also known as a ruthless dictator who was killed by one of his own men because he was ruthless and deadly. Which I do like that they bring up that, yes, it's true that people consider Nobunaga to be quite evil, but at the same time, it's hard to tell if that's really true because we're only getting the perspective of the people that were under him. He must have had something to him that allowed him to unite all of Japan. Instead of being just a bunch of warlords warring over each other, he managed to unite Japan into a singular kingdom. Which I actually like, because it's this whole thing about perspectives and how Gates and Tsukuyomi's perspectives are what shapes Sogo into being a good king and why he should be a good king. And in fact, Tsukuyomi realizes that herself, that she needs to be more productive and to work towards Sogo being a good king. It also shapes Gates' leave because he feels that he's becoming too soft because he's starting to become friends with Sogo instead of being able to defeat him if he should, turn actually evil. And I like that. I like seeing the Time Jackers work together to create another rider that could actually defeat Zio. I did really like the look of another O's. I'm not a big fan of the stupid like talent or like Taka wing like frills that kind of like hang off the back of another O's head. But otherwise, I like the look. He looks a lot like what you'd see in like SIC. And granted, a lot of the another riders look like SIC, but I think another O's looks like really like the SIC O's line. And so we get to see that. I like the seeing AG and Hina working together, even though they have to act like they never met each other. We get to see Hina use her strength. I actually like that she's there and that she must be working for Dawn for some reason, but it was cool seeing her. And I like seeing AG, and I think AG's really well done there. Fun fact on his suit, he has a little pin with a red feather on it. That was actually done by the actor that plays AG because he wanted to make a little reference to Ankh. Which is a shame that that Toei didn't want to do that, but it's whatever. I know Ankh couldn't be here because his actor was probably busy doing something else, but it was cool to see AG doing that, and especially because the actor knows how important Ankh is to AG, even if the timeline has changed. And in fact, he has both the O's Ride Watch and the O's Tajador ride watches. And so they fight another O's, which at first they think he's from 2016, which is where Dan being an X8 rider is, which I actually like because like Tsukami realizes that the ride watch is based off of X8, which they already defeated. But Gates decides to go back there since that's when Dan murders his father. Later they find out he murders his father, which is weird because they imply that he murdered his dad. But in the scene when they're fighting, when Gates and O's fight each other, Dr. Maki's doll is there. So at first I thought he murdered Dr. Maki or Cake Boss, especially because like the room that they're in is is Cake Boss's room. Sort of. It's not completely like Cake Boss's room. He doesn't have the giant gramophone in it or anything, but it looks a lot like Cake Boss's setup. And I know his name. He has a name, but I always call him Cake Boss. So they go back to 2010, and he uses the Genom ride watch that dropped off of Dan when he got attacked by the Taka ride watch, which debuts here, and it's never explained where it comes from. It just sort of is here. I guess it's just a part of the Taka ride watch, or the Tajador ride watch, is you get a Taka Candroid-esque ride watch, which is of course a reference to the Candroids from O's. And so he fights Dan using that. It was actually kind of cool. He actually uses it a couple times. The other time is when Ora attacks them using her time machine, which is shaped like Castle Doron. I guess that's the running motif with the time machines for the time jackers, is they're all based on like vehicles or mounts that giant mounts that the Kamen Riders rode, like how Wool showed up in a time machine shaped like Captain Ghost from Ghost, obviously. And Aura appears in Castle Doron, which is actually cool because at first I thought it was just going to be an like the X8 ride watch, but it actually allows him to use the wheel projectiles from Shakariki Sports, which is what Genmu used a lot of before he got Dangerous Zombie. It was the Proto Mighty Action X and Shakariki Sports were his main gashettes. I really should have got my pop out. In fact, I might do that here in a minute. But basically, they realized that they were in the wrong time because on Another Rose's back is the time date from where he first appeared. Whenever the Kamen Rider first debuted is when they appeared. And Tsukuyomi realizes she read it wrong. It's not. At first, she thought it was 2016, but it turns out there was like a small gash taken out of the placard at the last O in 2010, and so it looked like 2016. But after the glare wipes off, Tsukuyomi realizes that wasn't the time. By this point, Sogo is now working for Dan. Which I thought was kind of an interesting idea. I pretty much knew from the beginning he wasn't going to be, but I kind of figured it was all a ruse because Soga wants to know how to be a good king instead of an overlord, which I actually like that makes Dan mad. He doesn't want to be an overlord. He wants to be a king, which I guess he thinks he's a good king. I don't know. He openly flirted with Hina and tried to make her his wife. And then when she didn't, he was going to throw her into a dungeon until she decided to become his wife, which is messed up, but you know, that's Dan Kuroking for you. So I actually really like Waz in this too, because I think he's kind of upset that like Sogo would work under someone else or another king until like the very end. But anyway, well, we'll get there. We'll get there. So basically, Gates at first is upset and injured by Sogo, and they go back to Casa de Sogo, and Sogo's uncle tries to help Gates out, and Tsukuyomi tells him to get a first aid kit. But at first, I thought she was really going to use the first aid kit, but it turns out she just said that so she could use her magic space-time tablet to heal Gates's wounds. Although he still has wounds, like he just doesn't have the physical ones. He's still like I guess internally injured, or he's still exhausted / weakened from his fight with X-Aid. And that's where we get the part with where Tsukuyomi talks to Sogo's uncle, who's like, yeah, it's true that a lot of people say that Nobunaga was a ruthless dictator or a monster, but that was only one side to him, or one perspective. That there are multiple perspectives of people, and you should see all of them before you truly judge them as a person, which is what Sogo is doing with Dan, and I actually really like that. I like that Sogo wanted to see what kind of king Dan truly was, and if not, if he should stop him or not, which I actually like. I like that he doesn't just want to jump in and stop him. I mean, granted, it's pretty obvious, but like, it's interesting that Sogo wants to see how people act before he rushes in. He's very cautious in that way. And so he runs into Eiji, who he can feel has the aura of a king as well, but his power is from desire, which is a big running theme in O's. And here we see that Eiji's desire is still the same as ever, that he desires to reach out to people and to save people, and that he knows that he can't always you can't just save someone by yourself. You have to have other people. And of course they flash back to the girl that died, and I want to say it was like the Middle East or somewhere in like Somalia or something like that, or like in Africa. I forget exactly where it is. It's somewhere where there was a war taking place, and so Sogo ends up liking Eiji and realizing that he's more deserving of being a king than Dan. It's almost like he's trying to find the rightful king, which is, like, which O's is the right O's. Since Kamen Rider O's, when you spell out the 3 O's, it's Ozu, which is the Japanese kanji word for king. And so he fights Dan for a little bit until Gates comes back. At this point, Gates has realized that he did all this to get in his good graces. Speaking of, when he fights Gates, he actually does this really cool thing where Gates kicks him before he can transform, and he does so that he can kick into his Ziku driver so that it spins so you could activate his transformation. That was actually a pretty cool moment for Sogo, and I actually really, really liked it. So yeah, I liked a lot of stuff that happened. But Gates comes in and helps fend off Kessel, Dordon, Majin until Tsukuyomi shows up to help Sogo, because she's realized what point they should go back to in 2010, and it's not the murdering of I forget Masamune Dan. Yeah, his Dan's father's like Masamune Dan and not Dan Kuroto. And so he figures they should go back to when Wool actually met him in 2010, when he was trying to develop the Ultimate video game, back during the original run of X-Aid. And instead of there he is tricked by Wool into becoming a king that would be greater than any god, by becoming another O's, which of course then we get to Sogo fighting Dan and he proving that he's better than him. But before we get there, we actually get to see more of the Timezine turning into different forms, this time using the O's ride watches. And I kind of forgotten that in order to transform the Timezine, you have to put a ride watch into the Ziku driver, or the person controlling it, and then the ride watch will change the head of the time machine in its robot mode. In this case, it always gives it the claws, and when Kessel Doran Majin tries to fly away, he uses Tajador so that he could. Sorry, I'm getting a little winded. So that he could gain the Tajador wings for the time machine, so it could fly. Which I don't know. It could already fly as a time machine, but I guess it can't fly when it's in mech mode unless the ride watch they use has flight capabilities. So it fights the time machine and defeats it using a variant of the Gigascan kick from that O's Tajador had. In fact, it goes Gigascan time break, and I love the Gigascan kick. That's like my favorite kick. Although, granted, it's kind of weird because it kind of mixes things because the kick it's doing is Tajador's scanning charge, where it's the feet of the O suit turns into condor talons to deliver a flaming kick, whereas the Gigascan is you scan the Taja disc blaster. I think that's its name. I can't remember what the name of the Tajador weapon is, but you scan the coins in the disc, and it overcharges the power of Tajador for the Gigascan. Granted, it's the only one that has a Gigascan, although technically every other suit is supposed to have a Gigascan. It's just none of them use them. And then, of course, Puto Tira used Puto Tina no Hisatsu for its finisher, usually. But that's neither here nor there. And so, yeah, he goes back and he fights another O's using both the Hawk Watch, which apparently has a Thunder Hawk mode, it's called, where it shoots electricity. I'm guessing that's a reference to one of the Candroids having like an electricity mode. Especially because the Taka, it is based on the Taka Candroid, it really acts more like the Kujaku Candroid, except it doesn't shoot fire. And here he tells Den that no one can decide who the king. That's the job of the subjects. And in this case, he says that Tsukuyomi and Gates are the ones that decide if he is truly made fit to be a king. In doing so, he decides what kind of king he wants to be. So he uses the O's ride watch, and I actually at first I didn't really care for the O's form just because it looked kind of weird. But it's actually 3 parts: a hawk robot, a hawk armor part, a tiger armor part, and a grasshopper armor part that can fight on its own until it's time to form the O's armor, which then wraps around O's. And it actually looks really cool in motion. I will admit it's weird that it has asymmetrical shoulder pads, one having the tiger head and one having the tiger's like butt as the shoulder pauldron. There's no real good way of saying it's the tiger's butt. And he has, of course, the Taka claw, or the Tora claws, and he fights Dan. And I actually really like the time break as well, where it creates medals with the kanjis for Taka, Tora, and Bata instead of making the symbols as it does in O's. And they as he does the kick, they slam into the opponent, until X8 slams through them, which actually merges them together to make the O's chest symbol, except it's in kanji, like on his chest instead of like the O's chest. And it was actually kind of cool, especially because Sogo does the Seiya, the Seiya, the battle cry that Eiji usually uses, where he shouts Seiya, which is kind of funny because we're getting Gaim next, and his was Seiya. He also does like a shout, only it's not Seiya, it's Seiha. I'm a huge dork. But yeah, and then the episode ends and Gates decides to leave, which I actually thought was kind of saddening, and it's interesting because Aura seems to be looking on at Gates. I almost wonder if she's got plans for Gates. We'll see how it goes. I'm curious to see what exactly she'll do and what her plans are for. Sorry. Like I said, it's tired. I've been talking for 24 minutes. I'm curious to see what will happen, especially as we're going into the O's arc. I'm happy to see that apparently we're getting both Kota and Kaito back. It's nice to see both the first and secondary rider come back. And apparently we're going to the Helheim Forest in the two-parter that's coming next. But I'm curious to see what will happen. I'm not a big fan of the O's armor. I think it's a little too busy, but we'll get there when we get there. But otherwise, I thought this was a pretty fun one. My only real complaints with it is that AG really only gets to do stuff in the second episode because he's locked up for most of the first episode as like a mystery. Otherwise, I think it was good. I wish we could have gotten more O's characters. I feel like O's is more fun with the rest of the cast, like Dr. Maki and Cake Boss and Goto, and I want to say there's another Don there. I actually really like the fact that they used Nobunaga here, since Nobunaga was technically the first user of the birth system in O's, because he was in the I think it's the Shogun, or no, it's Movie War 2010, I think. No, Movie War 2010 is double. And I forget exactly what the second. I think it's either it had a date. I want to say the first two are dated. I can't remember what. Or no, maybe it was Movie War Core. That's right. Movie War Core. I like that they used Nobunaga for that, and it's kind of Don's kind of wearing an outfit that makes it seem like he is trying to be like Nobunaga, which works out, especially because Nobunaga plays an important role with O's. And in fact, Nobunaga, I think, was one of the retainers for Bujin O's in the Sengoku movie war. But the less said about that movie, the better. I don't think that movie's that bad. It's certainly not as bad as like Ultimatum or, well, the O's portion of Movie War Core, written by Toshiki Inoue. But anyway, otherwise, getting back, I actually really liked it. I like the setup. I like the fact that we get some shake up to the status quo with Gates deciding to go on his own instead of working alongside Gates and Tsukuyomi. I think particularly just because it seems like it's going to be a hard time for Gates, because he seems to have gotten to care for Sogo, and I think he's trying to not give in to that so that he can defeat Sogo if the time comes, which I hope isn't, because I'm actually starting to warm up to Sogo as a character too. He seems brash and abrasive, but I like that he really is trying to be a good king. It's just he's not very good at it sometimes. Anyways, guys, I think that that's enough of a. I think that's a good enough place to stop. Like I said, I think this was a good time. My only real complaints is the alumni didn't really get to do a lot, but, well, except for Dan, but Dan Kuroking is always a fun time. But anyways, guys, I think that's gonna be it for this week. I'm sorry it took me 3 weeks, but that's just because episode 10 was on a hiatus. Hopefully I should be able to go back to doing bi-weekly, and they won't have to do it again like that. But also, I'm glad to say I'm doing this. I've had a rough couple of weeks, and I'm glad to be able to get back to doing a vlog again, because it was something nice and fun to do. Hopefully I won't have to do this at night again next time, so I can be a little bit louder. But anyway, guys, I'm Zangetsu 134, and I hope to catch you guys in another couple weeks when I review the Gaim arc of ZO. But until then, guys, I'm Zangetsu 134. Take care.